one day away from the season opener. It's an AFC Championship rematch between Kansas City and Baltimore. The Ravens averaged 5.1 yards per carry against the Chiefs in last year's conference championship game, slightly more than their season average entering the game. And despite the success, Baltimore rushed just 16 times for 81 yards. Both those numbers were half of their season averages entering that game. The 16 rushes were the fewest by the Ravens in any Lamar Jackson start in his career. There was plenty of conversation around that after the game. Dan, how do you expect the Ravens to game plan this time in the rematch with the Chiefs?
Yeah, remember, I think it was only 6 carries by actual backs in that game, right? Looking back to that playoff game last year, I think there's examples. These aren't the plays of what actually happened. The plays that were ran were negative results. But looking ahead to tomorrow night, let's get into the same formation, anticipate the same defense from Kansas City, and look at some of the things that Baltimore can actually do. Early in the game, you can get into that strips bunch set, and you can go zone read, or RPO, excuse me. That back could be a handoff number 1. You can get a block, and a lead bubble, and you're just reading that edge defender. There's only 6 guys in the box. If he flows out, hand it off. If he stays in the box, kick the bubble out, we're 3-on-2. That's step number 1. You can go number 2 and get this speed motion by this receiver, and he could be the handoff guy. And then again, with the light box from Kansas City's defense, Lamar can follow a pulling guard, and you're again reading that edge defender. We would have a hat for a hat. If he flows out, Lamar's the ball carrier. If he stays inside, we can use Zay Flowers with speed on the edge. Zone read. Back goes inside as the number 1 option. And then we can get a tight end to lead up to the safety, and Lamar could be a ball carrier. And Lamar's got a simple read again of that defender, and you're just doing what he does opposite. We would have such great leverage as an offensive line and numbers advantage. Again, those 3 plays or formations are from the playoff game. All 3 of them were negative plays for Baltimore's offense. All 3 were passes. So I think just looking at the style that Kansas City wanted to try and play, I think Baltimore needs to have that punch ready, that counter. If you're going to do it again, these are very simple zone reader RPO plays that Baltimore can get to.
And that's the part I'm intrigued about the most. You just said the way Kansas City wants to attack Baltimore on the defensive side of the ball. For Kansas City, one of the main ways they were able to run defense is because they had a guy, L'Jarius Sneed, at their cornerback position that followed the other team's best receiver around the field. He followed Zay Flowers that day. That allowed Trent McDuffie to go into the slot and be able to do so much that Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, who they call Spags, he blitzed McDuffie all over the field, and he also covered up every slot receiver whenever they faced an opponent. So I look at it now this year, you have guys vying for that cornerback 2 spot, whether it's going to be Joshua Williams, is it going to be Jalen Watson, is it going to be Najee Johnson, the young guy who's showing up? Which guy is showing up on that outside spot to see? Because now Trent McDuffie, all preseason, he has stayed on the left side of the field, and he hasn't been in the slot. So how does Spags attack this Baltimore Ravens offense this year with this set of players?
Real quick before Hawk jumps in, do you think McDuffie should go outside, or do you think he's better suited because of the versatility staying inside?
What I've seen from him so far in his career, he's amazing on the inside. So I think because of what they have, he's going to have to stay on the outside to be able to match up with whoever the best team's wide receivers. I think we're going to see him doing a lot of what Snead did last year.
He made it tough for Nelson Aguilar in that playoff game. But everything you said, Dan, is what I'm looking at, because I want to see Derrick Henry on full display. Like, just simple as that. He is the insurance that you brought in for your run game. This is already the best run offense a year ago. This is their power. But what this does is it allows an opportunity for Lamar Jackson's running ability to be a luxury instead of a necessity. Going back to that AFC playoff game, to your point, Dan, when they came out, the first play of that game, the Ravens came out in their 12 personnel, and the Kansas City Chiefs stacked the box. Go look at what Derrick Henry has done against the Kansas City Chiefs. Him coming into Baltimore is absolutely them gearing up and getting ready to get over that hump to the Super Bowl, and it starts in week 1. He has played them 6 games in his career, including playoffs. 672 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns. We want to see it early and often this first game, because it'll set them up for the remainder of the season on the way their offense is deployed in year 2 under Todd Monken.
Glad you're here on NFL Live. Time now to read and react. Let's start in Houston, where C.J. Stroud on the upgrades is talking about those made by the Texans on offense.
Strategically, I think Nick did a great job of, building us from top to bottom, really bottom to top, looking both ways. He's done a good job of filling in the spots we felt like we needed, and then, bringing in guys who we thought that we felt fit our style to play. We're always playing, we're always smiling, always having fun. And we're all really competitive, and you know, everybody wants to eat, which I think is a great thing. So.
I love it. What will you be watching for, Jason, when Stroud faces Indianapolis specifically?
Well, what he just said, everybody wants to eat. And for C.J. Stroud, you got to imagine that you saw him in year one. He's only going to take a leap in year two with Bobby Sloak as his offensive coordinator. The issue now is there's weapons aplenty. We heard Stephon Diggs say he was in the worst mental space of his career in Buffalo. And you got to imagine the lack of targets later on in the season has something to do with that. Well, now enter Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell's going to be healthy. You have Schultz on the outside. How does he manage to get the ball around to all of these guys? He was so good a year ago at the decision making and ball placement. Now he has to do it with even more on his plate. But C.J. Stroud, he's one of those ones. He'll figure it out.
Yeah, if they win, then probably nobody's chirping at him.
Not at all.
They'll probably win a lot, but we'll see. Let's go to Jacksonville, where Trevor Lawrence spoke about facing the Dolphins with their new defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver.
Yeah, it's challenging. You know, when you're early games in the season are always a little tough, but especially when it's a new defensive coordinator. So you try to, you know, piece it all together, some preseason stuff, some Baltimore stuff, all those things. You got to kind of try to, you know, take your educated guesses on, you know, what you're going to see, and you got to prepare kind of for everything. And obviously it'll be a big game where you adjust as you go.
And Trevor put on some muscle or something. That like,
yoked up, man.
Goodness. All right, Dan, what does Lawrence need to be ready for Sunday, though, for against the Dolphins?
Rules. When you're a young player or you're playing against a new coordinator, rules are everything. And I think for Trevor Lawrence, it's going to be the rules of their protections and the rules of their hots. There's new pieces, Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis, but he's going to get challenged by Anthony Weaver, who comes from the little bit of the Houston Texans, a little bit of the Baltimore tree. So the rules of your protection, who's the hot, who are you hot off of, what's the responsibility, the communication element of that. To try to sit there and decipher it all in week one, you can get yourself into trouble. But just staying very basic, very fundamental, and listening to the rules, no matter what the defense is doing, I think it helps you avoid massive mistakes and leads to just some small wins throughout the game.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was just preseason, but he looked more aggressive in the preseason. We'll see if that continues. To Atlanta, where head coach Raheem Morris is trying to get ready for whatever Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin throws at him with the quarterback position.
I think whoever's playing quarterback, you know, is going to present that challenge. You know, like Mike told me to prepare for Justin Fields, so we did. That's a nice way to make me waste time, and he's the master at it. He's conducting a master class on field, though he's not. And Fields going to show up.
I love it. We know Russ is the starter, Schefter, but can you tell us more about the Steelers' plan for Justin Fields week one?
Well, let's not forget the fact that Mike Tomlin and Raheem Morris work together in Tampa and know each other well, are very close. And Mike Tomlin, I think, is poking fun at his friend and floating the idea that he's going to find a way to get Justin Fields on the field. And clearly Raheem Morris was paying attention because they've been practicing for that possibility this week. Now, we don't know exactly how they're going to use Fields, but nobody's going to be surprised if he shows up in certain select situations Sunday.
Either way, as Raheem said, you got to think about it, which certainly could be a waste of time. We'll see. All right, to Tennessee, Titans head coach Brian Callahan just gave this update on DeAndre Hopkins, who suffered a knee injury in July. Listen to this.
Same guy. You know, he looks like Hop. He's been great. He's been really communicative about, you know, how he feels and where his body's at, and making sure he's getting to work to be ready to play. So everything he's done has been exactly what we're looking for in terms of communication and process. So that's been positive.
A reminder that the initial diagnosis suggested Hopkins would be out 4 to 6 weeks. Hawk, what kind of boost would Hopkins give this Titans offense?
It gives them balance and versatility from the wide receiver profiles. He's a completely different wideout than Calvin Ridley is. In his best and at his worst, even when he struggled, he is their contested catch guy, and he does that beautifully. Ridley can do that, but he is better as a route runner. It also gives you the versatility of moving Ridley around because he's great in the slot, he's great on the outside because of that route running ability. He'll be able to move around in this offense with Hopkins on the outside, similar to how he did in Atlanta versus what he did in Jacksonville, because he had to kind of stay on the outside in singularity because of, out of necessity, he was the only option that they had at that position.
Yeah, it was like we were talking about earlier on the show. Even if Jamar Chase isn't 100% or can't play the whole game for the Bengals, just thinking about him, they could use that in Tennessee, just putting Hop out there. All right, that's that.